Hello, welcome to the first ever live event that we at Swallow Yachts have streamed on Facebook. This is of course the launch of the brand new BayCruiser 21 and a chance for people to ask questions. This is the very first boat that we've built. It's the same, it's just got back from Dusseldorf Boat Show where she was on display and got a very good reception. We've sold quite a lot of them now. And I'm really pleased with the way she sails as well. We thought we could just launch her for you into our test pond here, and then we'll do the rest of the Q&A once we get in the water. So I'll just show you quickly, wind out a bit of that, and then just a little gentle shove and she starts going down the trailer. We leave her to go out a little bit now. So we use this pond for float testing nearly all of our boats, checking skin fittings and water ballast and running the engine and toilets. Well, we don't flush the toilets, but check that they're okay. But it's very useful for checking that the keels go all the way down and rudders work and all the rest of it. So come on board and I can take the first questions. Okay, I'll put them down in a sec. This is the washboard.
Okay, so the first question we've got is what options are available with the BC21?
Options available, fairly similar to the Bay Raider Expedition and the Cruiser 23. Things like the Flexi-Teak seating, which this boat has. Choices of timber for the exterior. This is Iroko. But the standard timber is Utili. There's a spinnaker, which is an option. The sail bag up here, the stack pack lazy bag. A spray hood. Anything electrical, like electric bilge pump, chart plotter, depth sounder, navigation lights, those kind of options. And your choice of engine and the trailer. Those are probably the main options. Yeah.
Alright. I guess a follow on from that is what are the main
standard features of the boat? Well, where this one has we feel moved the game on for us over our previous boats and over other boats on the market is it's quite a small boat to have a fully self-draining cockpit. We've improved things like the comfort of the seating, the visibility over the cabin, so it's a much shorter height here than it is on some boats and on our Bay Raider Expedition, so you don't have to crane your neck to see over. The side deck access is a lot better. It's got actually quite level side decks with a proper tow rail, so you can actually walk forward quite easily. I'll do so now, and you can, and I'll show you up on the foredeck. So it's much easier than the Bay Raider Expedition to do that. Foredeck, we've got a dedicated anchor, which is really nice, and the foredeck itself you can see is quite recessed, so it feels quite safe comparatively to be working up here. The other there's some improvements in the cabin which I'll come to in a minute. There's this has a bowsprit system a bit similar to the 23, which is a retracting bowsprit, so you have to set the bowsprit first before you can launch the spinnaker. Okay. But the other answer to your question, sorry, was some of the other features that come with it is the water ballast system is the main one. We haven't got the water ballast tank full at the moment because we've only just launched it. We could pull the bung out and let it flood with 400 litres, so it's a little bit more than the 350 of the Bay Raider Expedition, but the boat is a little bit higher, a little bit more freeboard, which gives us the self-draining floor and the more comfortable backrest. So that water ballast system is really so useful for...
Aha, we're back on.
So I was just talking about the advantage of the water ballast. I might be preaching to the converted, but it is such a versatile system for a trailerable boat. So you can have a boat which is quite light on the trailer, so you don't need a huge car to pull it, but when you need it to be, filling the tanks makes the boat self-righting from a 90-degree knockdown. So it makes a huge difference to the feel of... Next question, please.
So the next question, is there a place for a little stove and a shelf, etc. to prepare snacks?
Well, yes, funny you should ask, because that was one of the... When I was designing it, I was umming and ahhing a lot about whether to build this little feature in. And I'm glad I did, because you'll be protected under the spray hood here. The spray hood comes back to about here. Typically, if you're at anchor, she will be bow into wind, so you'll be quite sheltered here underneath the spray hood. Cooking in a cabin this size is a little bit of a non-stop steam, and sorts of, you spill a bit of food in the cabin, spill a bit of food out here. It's on a self-draining floor. You can just feed the fish. So for me, who's a clumsy cooker, this is probably the best option. It's a flat surface. You can have a cool box in here, and prepare first class kind of meals. Well, it doesn't really matter whether it's first class or not. I've got a rule: if you're eating outside, it tastes better. If you're eating outside on a boat, it tastes even better, no matter what it is. So that's the idea there.
How high are the gunwale backrests in the cockpit?
I have a tape measure. So here at their highest point, they are 32 centimetres, 320 mil, or 1 foot 1 inch, 1.5 inch. Back where the helm's inches, but small boat for the comfort. Okay, maybe you have to stay at the bow for a bit. Okay.
So, what does the connection to supplemental batteries for an electric motor look like?
Might have to show you that one in the cabin.
Yeah.
There's space for a large traction battery. Various brands we looked at and made sure nearly most of them can fit. So if people wanted an electric motor to propel the boat, then a large traction battery here on the starboard side of the boat. We've got the chemical toilet on the port side. There's no reason to have it either way round, and in fact, if you really wanted loads of battery capacity, you could have 2 batteries, port and starboard, to double your range. You would then have a problem with where to put the toilet. But obviously space is a bit limited on a small boat. One large traction battery would probably do for most people, because the boat is pretty light and easily powered. She's only 550 kilos with no water ballast in. So if you had a long trip to do under engine, you might consider pumping the tanks out. There's a manual pump. It takes about 15 minutes of pumping.
Next one. Are there plans to add a collapsible table someplace, either in the cockpit?
Yes. Shall I go in the cabin now?
Yeah.
I'm just going to take my shoes off, because I could show you a bit about where those batteries would go, and answer some more questions about that table. So, and also to show you really the thing I'm most pleased about with this boat, which is the cabin. So I'll go in here. Okay, so I don't know if you can see in here, but I am sat here quite comfortably athwartships, and we have this footwell arrangement, which looks simple, and it is simple, but it did take quite a bit of thinking about to get it right. It means that you don't step straight onto your bunk. The infills that go in here when you're sleeping are pinned to they're hooked on the wall here. There's one each side, and they drop down here to form a bed. There's also the porta potty I was talking about here. So you can close the washboards down and the hatch and have some degree of privacy, as much as you're going to get on a 20-foot boat, I'm afraid. But it's a lot better than nothing. You were asking about...
One of the questions was a demo of how the cushions go down.
Oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah. So we take this off, it's hooked onto there, spin it around, and it drops in to there, just like that. I think it's in place there now, yes it is. Okay, so now you've got, if I lie down here, so take my job. I'm only 5, I wasn't 3/4 a long time ago. But it's fair to say, I'll just measure this bunk while I'm here. 2 meters and 5 centimeters. So that is 6'9". Yeah, 6'9", more or less. So it might even suit some Dutch people. You asked a question when I was about to come in. What was that?
It was plans for a collapsible table.
Oh yes, the table question. Yeah, so let me just put this bit back here, the infill. What is have something which...
Okay, we're good.
What I'd like to do is have a table which clips onto here, the compression post, and that you could also take outside. I just haven't figured it out how to do both jobs yet, but I'm working on it. It will get added to the options list. It would be a nice feature because it is so comfortable sitting here that you could have a bit of a meal, and if you're cooking outside, having a table to put stuff down on and do some prep is very useful as well.
I think it was just what the inside looks like. So is there any other details?
There's the storage space under here is probably worth showing people if you want. You could pass me the camera if you want. Or okay, so under here, each side, so that's the companionway, we've got this quite large space here. The traction battery would go down there on the floor under the cockpit floor, but there's a lot of room for the kind of kit bag storage that I anticipate, there's the loo, that I anticipate being the kind of way that most people would use this boat. Realistically, you know, they're not going to come on board and spend, that's our washboard storage, and spend weeks on board. Well, they might if they've got very understanding partners, but I anticipate mostly it would be day and weekend use, and therefore you come on board with a load of kit bags and you probably live out of them rather than unpack it. Right at the very front end of the cockpit there's a low spot down here in this little well, and the idea of that was to have that to be the place where we fit transducers for depth gauge. So that gives you that's quite far forward in the boat, so it gives you a reasonable, if you're crawling into a shallow anchorage slowly, you can see a rock, hopefully, before your keel hits it. Well, you've got about 1.5 meters to react before the keel hits it.
Cool. So the next question, what maintenance should I expect to upkeep with this craft?
Maintenance is really going to be about the woodwork. So the woodwork looks lovely, and it's I think it adds such an element of class to the boat. But it does mean that it does have the drawback that if you want to keep it looking nice like this, you have to oil it. You can leave the Iroko to go silver grey, garden furniture colour like teak, but I think it tends to make the boat look quite old straight away. So within one summer, your boat looks 3 years old. In 5 summers' time, it'll still look 3 years old if you keep it clean. So maybe it's not that big a deal, but I kind of like I'm going to try and keep mine looking nice with the woodwork a little bit treated rather than just left to go with the sun. But it's not a durability issue, it's really an aesthetics issue.
Okay. So there's nothing else durable-wise that you'd have to...
No, this stuff, the FlexiTeak, is absolutely brilliant. You can pressure wash it, which you mustn't do with wood. Don't ever aim a pressure washer at your wood, but you can aim it at this, and it drives all the dirt off just beautifully. The rest of it is gel coat, glass fibre, and copper anti-fouling if you have that option. So the anti-fouling is worth having. I think if you're going to keep the boat in the water, the copper anti-fouling is worth having, especially in Northern Europe, where it's just got a really good balance of effectiveness and lack of maintenance for sort of 10 or so years.
Okay, fab.
You had some questions about the rig, did you, or
Yeah.
not?
What details did you focus on when designing the rig?
So, really observant people will notice she hasn't got a mizzen like the Bay Raider Expedition has got a mizzen, but this one we decided that we wanted to try and get as much cockpit room aft as we could for lounging around at anchor and for carrying crew, although not many people would really sit that far aft when you're sailing. But we put all of the mizzen's area back into the main and the jib, and then we added a little bit as well because this boat is a little bit more powerful and a little bit heavier. So carbon was the only choice we ever considered for the material for it because of the ease with which one person can step it and drop it, but also because it just adds so much to the stability of the boat when you're sailing. If you've got a lightweight rig, it's like having loads of extra weight in a keel, having less weight aloft. And we've also gone for a carbon boom as standard, which we haven't done before. And that again is about ease of handling. This whole boom drops off on a cassette system as standard, which means that all the sail slides that sit in the track are preloaded onto a dummy section of track at the very bottom of the mast, just above the boom, just above the gooseneck. So when we undo this little black knob here, the whole lot comes off, and it actually stores in its own, it clips into there, and the bolt goes through here. Back end of the boom is hooked on the port that the mast hooks onto. So it's all really, really neat, and I think we can rig this boat. I can rig this boat in under 10 minutes from fully tied on the trailer to ready to launch and hoist the sails. And we will be posting a video somewhere, YouTube probably, doing that to show it can be done. And if you don't hear a video, then it obviously can't be done. But I've been telling customers at the boat show for a long time that yeah, we can rig this in under 10 minutes, and that's really important to me because who really enjoys hanging around at a slipway while you're rigging a boat? And if you can't drop the mast quickly and easily and pack it down quickly and easily, you're maybe a bit less likely to use it. Yeah. So really important, I think.
Well, there's a question that's just come in from Louis. Is there storage under the cushions?
No, there's no storage under the cushions in the cabin because it's the water ballast tank.
Okay. Basically,
The water ballast tank is under the floor, around the base. The only place it's scalloped out is the footwells here. The water ballast tank virtually touches the hull there, but everywhere else it's forming a very shallow pan to get that water as low as possible to improve centre of gravity.
Okay, thanks. Another question: what trip can this craft withstand?
What depth and length of sailing trip can this craft withstand? Well,
How adventurous
it can withstand any depth of water as long as it's on the top. That's a bit of a loaded question because so much depends on the experience of the crew and the experience of the helmsman, and 2 metre waves can be benign in some circumstances but horrendous in others. If they're breaking 2 metre waves, then you're in trouble. If they're long, slow, gentle swell, then you could survive perfectly happily. So it's RCD rated to category C, which is 2 metre wave height and a force 6 conditions. But a lot of my owners wouldn't like to be out in those conditions, I'm sure. Only a certain sort of person enjoys the top end of those sort of conditions, really. Yeah. But yeah, let me just not to take this call.
So there's a
I'll
couple
put that
of
on
questions
silent.
that came in.
Yep.
Is there storage under the seats?
Under the seats in here, yes, the lockers. I haven't shown you them really.
Yeah.
I'm just worried that guy's going to call back, so let me just make sure I put it properly on silent. There we go, sorry. Storage under the seats. You mean the cockpit seats, I'm guessing?
I think so.
Well, let's start at the back end, actually. The very back end here, there's buoyancy. So that is literally just buoyancy. Clamps onto here, so that's enough weight in the back. I wanted to keep from this point aft is all air buoyancy. Under here, we've got a space for a petrol tank. It's at least 12 litres will go in there without any problem. So you unhook that and put your petrol can in, and that will feed your petrol engine. If you are running an electric engine, you could use that for fender storage, which otherwise has to go in here or under here. So if I show you, this is the smallest locker, this one on the starboard side. We've got bits of trailer and clobber in there at the moment, but it's I can give you an idea. The opening is 750 mil long, 750 by an average of about 360 millimeters wide, and the length of it inside is a bit longer. It's nearly a metre. It's 960 long by probably an average of about 600 wide. The locker on the port side is quite a lot longer. It goes right underneath, almost to where you're sitting. So again, that one is same opening size, 750 by about 360. But length under here till I hit the bulkhead at the end is nearly 1.4 meters long. So you could sleep a couple of small children in there, and 600 wide. So this is useful so you can store longer stuff. This is the pump handle that goes in here to pump the water ballast out.
Another comment question. I think you mentioned it earlier, but it was just how much water ballast does she hold?
400 litres, so 400 kilos, well, a bit more than that in salt water, but 400 basically. And that's enough to make her self-righting from a 90-degree knockdown, which is another thing we're going to probably do some video work on and stick on YouTube when the weather's a little bit warmer.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, there's one last question. Maybe we could cover it when we're recovering. Do you have any personal tips and tricks for sailing or launch and recovery?
The launching, I would try always to avoid getting the hubs of the trailer wet, so you don't have to with this boat unless the slipway is virtually non-existent. It's virtually flat, you know. Every slipway will have some gradient on it. Once you've got to the point where the tyres are fully wet, if it's a really shallow slipway, you might have to get the bottom of the wheels wet, but you certainly don't have to get the hubs properly in the water. So that would be my first tip. Just to save yourself the maintenance of brake issues and salt water. If you do get salt water in them, try and rinse them out with fresh water, and ideally then take the trailer for a drive and hit the brakes a few times to get the brakes warmed up and to evaporate, burn off any water and salt that's still in there. With rigging and de-rigging, we've designed the boat to try and be as simple as possible to do all that, where you don't have to undo very many fittings. So for example, the main sheet, that can all stay attached. You only have to undo the kicking strap when you take the boom off, and it all slots down. So the less you can undo, stop and ask yourself, do I need to undo this bit of rope? Because if you don't, then don't do it, and you'll find it's a little bit easier to not get everything so tangled afterwards when you come to put it back up. Sailing, I'm not going to give anyone tips on sailing. No, but I have to say we finished the boat just about in time for Dusseldorf Boat Show, and that was in mid-January, and I'd been out sailing in it 2 or 3 times before Dusseldorf, and all times there was either no wind at all, or there was a reasonable amount of wind, but there was a really neap tide, which meant that the estuary where we sail is barely a metre in places. In fact, there's hardly anywhere where it's more than a metre on a neap tide, and that meant we couldn't get the keel all the way down. The rudder kept hitting the bottom and releasing. So it was a really, before Dusseldorf, it was a really frustrating few sails in the boat. Since then, went out with a big spring tide and a nice wind, about force 3, force 4, and it was absolutely fantastic, and I really totally fell in love with the boat. So it was a bit inconclusive before Dusseldorf. Now I've sailed it properly, I'm really, really, really happy with it, and can't wait to get out in our own demonstrator later this summer.
Great. There is a couple more questions that have popped up.
Yep.
One, what about the tiller clutch system?
Ah, yes. So if we swap seats. So all of it. Okay, so it's released at the moment, and the tiller is frequent. But if you pull this rope nice and tight, which has some bungee built into it, then the rudder is really quite stiff there and doesn't want to move. And so it's like a bit of an extra pair of hands, or a poor man's tiller pilot, autopilot. But it's dead useful, and in fact, the other day when I was out sailing, I used it quite a lot and left it on, even though I was hand on my tiller quite a lot, and I could go forward, mess around with ropes that I didn't really need to mess around with, but it worked really, really well, holding the tiller a bit more stiffly. The other thing it's nice for is if you're raising mainsail, so you might have the engine on a little bit, gently pushing your head into the wind, and you can just tweak that, and it gives you a couple of minutes to faff around with the mainsail before you need to tend to the tiller again without it going wild. Also heaving to, very useful there as well. So I hove to for a few minutes just to test, because with a new boat it's one of the nice things to test about it, whether it'll do it all right. And certainly in the conditions we were in, I had the jib backed, the tiller over to port, and she just lay there absolutely happily, making about 2 knots, slightly with a pointing at about 45 degrees to the wind, or any incoming waves. We were in the estuary, so there weren't very many waves, but it's a nice thing to do if you need to do something on the boat and there's only one of you. Hove to, or heaving to. What else?
Are there midship cleats always mounted?
Yes, there are. These little ones, we decided to provide them as standard. So yeah, that's one of the things. So there's actually 6 cleats, 2 at the bow, 2 midship, and 2 stern back here, as standard for the boat.
So there's a couple of other questions. On your Cat C rating up to F6,
Yeah.
is that gusting F6 or F6 gusting higher?
The regulations just say force 6 maximum wind, so I'd imagine it's gusting to force 6. I don't know. It's a good question. It shows the limits of, in a way, of the kind of paperwork aspect of trying to predict these things, or trying to legislate and categorise these things. The problem from the RCD point of view is that it tries to squash everything from virtually a canoe to an ocean-going 60, 70-foot yacht into 4 categories. So the categories themselves are very broad, and this boat is well capable of sea, but it's just a little bit too small and too light to get the next category up, which is B, which is force 8 and 4 metre wave heights, I think. So the RCD kind of rightly, the regulations reward weight and length and beam and all sorts of factors like that. They give a lot of points for, and this boat is just a little bit too small and light to get into the next category up.
Okay. So it sounds like there's someone keen here. They said, how easy is it to arrange a test sail, and what are your production lead times?
Test sail, you have to come to Cardigan in West Wales, which is a nice place to come, and our lead times, so we will have a demonstrator. We don't actually have one at the moment. There's this boat, which I've taken a few people out in, but it's very shortly going off to its first owner once we've cleaned it. And lead times are, we've taken orders for most of 2024, but there might be some slots available towards the end of the summer, and then we've got slots already booking up for spring 2025. So some owners have elected not to have it this summer for whatever reason, and they've booked for March, April, May of 2025.
A couple more coming in. Do you trim the job from midship, similar to the BR?
That's something I wanted to show you.
Above the cabin.
Above the cabin, so you might want to come back here, Lola, a bit. So these are your jib sheets here. So these are the Allen Brothers cam cleat, which we've tested a lot and against most of the competition, and we think they are exactly on a par with the Harken version and much better than everything else on the market. So we've gone for a season and swapped them round, and he basically reviewed it for us and told us which ones were the best, and these ones came out on top. So we're using the best cleats that we can. We've also angled them and we've brought them inboard as much as possible. So when you're sailing, here I am at the helm, I've got the jib sheet in my hand here, and everything is really easy to hand. The sheet loads are small. If they're too much, you can always rig a 2-to-1 if you want to, but I don't think anyone will on this. It's a small jib. I hope no one asked me the sail area of the jib because I can't remember, but sure drop me an email if you want to know. I sail on my own with the sheets like that quite often, so that I can reach one and then the other.
There's one more. Is a Hawk wind system possible?
A Hawk wind indicator, yes. That's easy. It's just a fitting on the top of the mast. I think it costs about £20. They might mean a wind indicator system with a display telling you if that's possible as well. Yeah, it's just the it's down to Lola, whether Lola holding the camera, she does all the rigging work. The top of the mast is quite small, so fitting in all of the bits and pieces, if someone wants a VHF aerial, wind indicator and a navigation light, it can get a little bit crowded up there and leaves us scratching our heads a bit, but it's possible, yeah, definitely.
So if anyone has any last questions, fire them in, but apart from that, maybe we should jump off and do some recovery.
I'll pull the rudder up before we pull her out of the water. Keel is up, so the keel controls are down here. I haven't touched them, so that's still up. And I will go, and I might put the washboards back in because it's West Wales. It's not raining now, which means it will be soon. Okay, so I'll just get off here. Yeah, need my life jacket on. Just winding in all the slack. So normally it'd start at about this point, I guess, if I hadn't let so much of the slack go. So this is a swinging cradle trailer, which is the ones we've used for years now, and we've got a little procedure for making sure that the boat comes on straight. That's to do with how the trailer is set up. If anyone wants that information, then just email us, and we'll be happy to share it. It's to do with the cradle rollers at the back. Can sometimes come from the manufacturer a little bit out of line, and that means your boat always goes on askew. Whereas this trailer's all right, it's been set up fine, and the boat should come on pretty much. Pretty much bang on straight, I think. Yeah, I can see the keel line right down the middle on the rollers, so that's good. Okay, any other questions?
That was it.
Good. Okay, well, hope that was instructive. Hope it's not